Alright, our goal is to sort of get you acquainted with using EasyC and just sort of understanding what all is on the program. Before we get started, I want to make sure that all my updates are working. If it isn't updated to the fullest level, the program is just not going to work, which is a fun feature, but you know, it's just what we have to do every time. The other thing we need to do is we need to go into EasyC4 and open up the firmware. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my USB port directly from my computer to the microcontroller, which is just the brain. It should find it. If it doesn't find it, I'm going to change the USB port that's in. Once it's there, I'm going to click a button for bootload, and then I'm going to download the master code. What that does is it allows me to have a fresh brain that's completely void of problems, right? And I'll connect. And I'm going to do that with both my microcontroller, and I'm also going to do that with my handset. And so once I've got that, it'll talk to the computer, everything's happy. You might have to go back to that later on also. When we're actually beginning to program, we're all going to do standalone projects unless we get to the point where we're going to do autonomous, in which case we'll do the competitive project. So standalone, I don't want to save that. It's going to be a joystick project. All your program is going to go in between the variables in the end, and we're going to just pull elements from over here and plug them in there. Alright, so that's where all that is. You have global variables that if I'm going to put any variable I'm going to put in here. You also have a variable icon. Don't use that. Use the global variables. So like let's say I wanted to put a short, and we'll get into using variables later. Let's just call this flex. Alright, and so I add a variable. The next thing we really want to look at is our controller configuration. This probably makes a little bit more sense to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mask tape. I'm going to label all my different motors, alright, as the port they're going into, because they're going to come out. And we'll say this is my left motor. I'm going to spell motor right. This is going to be my right motor. Alright, let's say I've got a button hooked up over here. And I've also got an LED. Let's see here. I can also bring in maybe a photoresistor. If I wanted to use one of those, I'm just going to call it a photo. And that's going to be hooked up in the analog. The difference between digital and analog is that analog is going to give you a number between 1 and 1,000. Digital is going to give you a 1 or a 0. It's like a switch. So the reason my button has to be here, my LED has to be here, is that the button's going to be giving the brain information to do with. And so that's what the arrow means going into the 0. The LED is going to be taking information and displaying it. And so I've got to make sure that arrow is going away from the circle for my LED. Alright. Let's add another motor for like lift motor. Right. Let's select OK. Once I have that configured, I'm going to go into my online window here, and I can click enable and allow me to work. The thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through, I'm going to manipulate everything. You probably want to have your bot on like a box right now, because now it's going to run around the room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this up, and when I have it, I'm going to say like maybe 127 is my full forward blast, and my right motor is probably going to be the exact opposite, so negative 127 forward, and this one is, let's say 127 is up. So what I'm doing is I'm just moving this back and forth, and the number I get there is what I want. Alright. I can also toggle my LED on and off. I can push my button and see if it changes. I can see what my analog values are here. Very useful. And really when I start programming, I'm going to use a significant amount. Alright. Yes, I want to save changes. Alright, I'm going to close this out. The last thing I really need to see to be effective with it is I need to see this build and download button. Sometimes you have to build and download before the online window will run, so you got to just run and develop a program with just like one motor in it and then go back. But you click build and download, it'll run the program onto your bot, and it'll work very, very well. And then we can play with it a little bit more later on. Alright, so that is your basic orientation.